One of the hardest things in life to get over is the feeling of betrayal, especially if that betrayal came from a friend. Just as Paul McCartney, he felt betrayed by his friend Michael Jackson, never spoke to him again. Now I know what you're thinking. What did Michael do? Well, we finna get to that. You see, this whole thing started with the phone call. Paul was chilling at the crib. Ring, ring, ring. He said, hello. The voice said, hello. Paul said, well, that voice petite, who this? The voice said, I'm gonna let that slide. It's Michael Jackson. I just want to say I rock with your music, man. Paul said, yo, Michael Jackson, I rock with your music too. Let's get in the studio. The two of them go to the studio. They start putting in some work, making some songs, some hits. And through that, a friendship blossoms. So Paul says, you know what, Mike, I've been in this game a long time. I rock with you. Let me give you some advice. You gotta own the publishing to your songs, which is basically like owning the copyright of a song. And when you own the copyright of something, that gives you the ability to sell that something wherever you want. As you can imagine, that makes a lot of money. So what record labels usually do is they take that publishing, that copyright, and give artists a small percentage while they sell the song wherever they want. So again, Paul McCartney is telling this to Michael Jackson. But here's where Paul McCartney has a problem. He shows Michael Jackson a list. He says, look, these are all the songs that I own the publishing to. Mike looked at the list. He said, no, where are them songs that you had with the Beatles? I know them joints making a lot of money. Paul said, look, that's a perfect example of what I was trying to tell you. When we was young, we ain't know nothing about publishing. The record label tricked us and they own all the Beatles songs. Michael said, okay, so what you saying is you ain't got the bread to buy your songs. So I'm gonna just buy the songs then. Paul said, he thought Mike was joking. Michael Jackson was not joking. See, what a lot of people don't understand is Michael Jackson wasn't just talented. His work ethic and his lock-in was unmatched. Michael Jackson went and studied music publishing. He learned all the trends, the ins and outs, how much it was gonna make. So Mike continues to tell Paul throughout their friendship, I'm going to buy your songs. But Paul continues to think it's impossible, so Michael Jackson is joking. The label's never gonna give up those songs. Michael Jackson don't got the money to buy those songs. Michael tripping. But then Michael Jackson drops the album Thriller and becomes Michael Jackson. He's on top of the world and he makes a lot of money. And here's where things start to get wicked. Now I need you to listen to this next part closely. The Beatles songs were owned by a publishing company that was owned by a billionaire. So this billionaire collected a bunch of songs from Elvis, the Beatles, Little Richard that he liked, and he made a publishing company, right? Now this billionaire decides, you know what, music publishing, it's trending down. It's not popping like that. In fact, many people at the time believed the same thing. But Michael Jackson studied music publishing, so he knew that was not true and it was on the rise. So Michael Jackson said, you know what, we finna buy that publishing company. So Michael Jackson tells his team to buy the billionaire's publishing company at all costs. The billionaire says, anybody who wants to buy these songs, give me your best offer. But we starting at 30 million. Now, Paul McCartney also wanted the Beatles songs that were owned by the music publishing company, but he don't got 30 million. So he says, you know what? I'm out. Y'all got it. Michael Jackson sends somebody to check with Paul McCartney. They said, you not buying the songs, Paul? He said, I'm not buying the songs. Mike said, bet. He starts throwing the cash. It goes up to $50 million. He said, I don't care. Buy me them songs. Michael's team told him, look, Mike, $50 million is way too much for music publishing. Mike told him, okay, if you got $50 million in your bank account, then you can give me advice. Everybody quiet. Okay. Buy me the songs. Michael Jackson buys the songs, which means he bought the music publishing company that owns the songs, the Beatles songs, Elvis songs. And here's where things start to get wickeder. Paul said, oh, bet my friend Michael Jackson just bought my songs. Let me holler at him real quick. Paul McCartney calls Michael Jackson. He says, hey, man, you bought all my songs. Mike said, I did. Paul said, look, I hate to ask, but like, can you give me like a good price? Can I just buy them from you? Mike's exact words were, it's just business, Paul. Paul was shocked. He said, Mike, I thought we was cool. You're not going to sell me my songs back? Mike said, I just bought these songs for 50 milli. Like, you going to give me 50 milli? All right. That's not what he said. I got a little carried away. Mike said again, Paul, it's just business. Paul was so hurt by this, they never spoke again, but it gets a little bit worse because Michael Jackson was known for his generosity. So throughout the years, many musicians start coming out saying, look, Michael Jackson bought my songs and he just gave them back to me, or he gave me a massive percentage. Little Richard, a music legend who was famously screwed by his labels, Michael Jackson gave him all his songs back. Meanwhile, Paul McCartney doing the calculations, he said, music legend screwed by his label. That sound like me. Where are my songs back, Michael? You know where Paul McCartney and the Beatles songs were? in commercials, and Paul McCartney never wanted his songs to be in commercials. Michael Jackson, since he owned the publishing, started putting them in commercials. Michael Jackson starts making racks, projected about $50 to $200 million a year from this music catalog. In fact, when Michael Jackson passed away, the music catalog he bought for $50 million was sold for $1 billion to Sony. And Paul McCartney said, I understand. He said Michael Jackson did what any businessman would have done, and he totally gets his decision. And as for the Beatles music catalog, Paul McCartney is actually getting a lot of those songs back because of how the United States copyright laws work. But sadly, Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney, after their final phone call, never spoke again. So never mix business and friendship. That wasn't the lesson. It was something about betrayal. Don't betray people either. Now, what's interesting to me is I feel like this story doesn't really have a right or wrong answer. At first, I was saying, look, Michael Jackson just made a business move. Hey, you got to do what you got to do. Now, I still think that, but with a caveat. I actually put myself in Paul McCartney's shoes, and I was thinking, bro, if my boy bought my life's work, I would be heated only because of the fact, listen closely, Paul McCartney didn't know how much his own catalog was worth, how much his publishing was worth. So in Paul McCartney's head, he's thinking, look, Michael Jackson made all this money off Thriller. Michael Jackson got stacks. He's taking my songs and he's probably going to make money, but not as much money as he's already making. You know what I'm saying? Michael Jackson, on the other hand, knew how much he was going to make off of Paul McCartney's catalog. So I feel like the difference lies in how much these two knew about music publishing. Because again, in Michael Jackson's instance, he's saying, why would I give you your songs when I know your songs are going to make hundreds of millions of dollars? I'm giving you hundreds of millions of dollars. Paul McCartney's thinking, bro, you probably gonna make like $1 million at that. You making like tens of millions on Thriller. Like, you just being selfish. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I feel like years later, Paul McCartney, after he saw how much his music catalog actually made, said, okay, Michael Jackson just did what any businessman would have done. Now, if you were in Michael Jackson's position, what would you do? Would you give your friend their catalog, or would you keep the whole thing? Now, if some of you are thinking like I was thinking earlier, I was like, what if I give this person a percentage since it's their life's work? And then I was like, okay, wait, this is their life's work. And remember what Paul McCartney's opinion was on selling his songs in commercials and all that. He wanted to buy his music catalog, Paul McCartney, not for the money, just to have his life's work. So I feel like if your friend was Paul McCartney, you went up to him, you're like, hey, can I just give you a percentage? This is about to make a lot of money. They would feel insulted. You know what I'm saying? Like, they would be like, dude, I don't want to make money off of my songs. I just want to have my songs. So at that point, I'm saying, ooh, more power to me. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye. No, but in all seriousness, I don't know if I would have the heart to sell my boy's songs if I knew my boy, like, didn't really want me to do that. But at the same time, I'm thinking, how well did they know each other in the first place? If I'm Michael Jackson, I'm like, are you really my boy like that? Like, we cool. Like, we made a couple songs together. We broke bread together. Like, we was cool. But like, you my $100 million, you my $1 billion boy. Like, I'm gonna throw away a bag for you. I'm gonna throw away a Billy for you. Like, come on, bro. We wasn't in the trenches together. Like, you just gonna have to be upset, Paul. Stop it. What was the main lesson of the story? What were we talking about? So we'll end it all by saying betrayal is bad, but it's kind of a case-by-case basis at the same time, because everybody has a different opinion on what they feel like is betrayal. Being human is hard. Let me know in the comments what you're doing if you Michael Jackson.